At this moment, you're probably getting rid of items that could one day protect and support your family when the next emergency hits. It's not because you're careless or indifferent. It's because over time, you've been subtly trained to assume that anything worn out, damaged, or outdated simply isn't worth keeping. In a stable, fully functioning economy, that mindset makes total sense. When stores are stocked, deliveries arrive on time, and money holds its value, replacing things is easy. But the moment that system starts to crack, when supply chains stall, shelves sit empty, and currency weakens, those everyday objects you once tossed aside suddenly take on a whole new level of importance. What looked like junk can quickly become the line between stability and real hardship. Today, I'm going to walk you through 15 specific items people throw away all the time, without a second thought, that could turn into essential survival resources if the financial system unravels. And pay close attention to number 8, because there's a good chance you discarded it just a few weeks ago without ever realizing how valuable it could be. Let's start with item number 1. Glass jars and containers. Think about how often you finish a jar of pasta sauce, pickles, or jam. Most of the time, you probably give it a quick rinse and drop it straight into the recycling bin without a second thought. I'm going to suggest you stop doing that. Those glass jars are far more valuable than they seem. Glass containers are incredibly versatile when it comes to storage. They seal tightly, which helps protect what's inside. You can reuse them over and over again without worrying about them breaking down. And because they're clear, you can instantly see what you've stored inside without opening them up. History backs this up. During the Great Depression, families who had a supply of glass jars for canning and food preservation were able to make it through harsh winters in ways that others simply couldn't. When grocery stores aren't reliably restocked and supply chains slow down, preserving food stops being a hobby and starts becoming a necessity. With glass jars, you can store dry staples like rice and beans, preserve garden vegetables, ferment foods, and even organize non-food essentials, things like nails, screws, seeds, or basic medical supplies. Their usefulness goes far beyond leftovers. Start holding on to every jar that passes through your kitchen. Clean them thoroughly, peel off the labels, and keep the matching lids. Over time, build up a reserve, ideally somewhere between 50 and 100 jars in a mix of sizes, before you consider yourself well prepared. In a serious crisis, these won't just be storage containers. They could easily turn into valuable trade items for anyone else trying to protect and preserve their own supplies. Now let's talk about item number 2, old clothing and leftover fabric. Most people get rid of clothes as soon as they rip, get stained, or fall out of fashion. The moment something looks worn or outdated, it's tossed aside. That's a costly mistake, especially in a long-term emergency scenario. Fabric isn't just something you wear, it's a multi-purpose resource. An old t-shirt can easily be transformed into cleaning cloths, makeshift bandages, fire-starting tinder, insulation, basic water filtration material, or even something you can trade. What seems like trash now can serve a dozen practical functions later. History shows us this clearly. During World War II, when rationing was strict and resources were scarce, families reused every scrap of fabric they could find. Clothes were patched repeatedly until they were beyond saving. After that, the remaining pieces were stitched into quilts, braided into rugs, or used as stuffing for pillows and cushions. Nothing went to waste. In a prolonged crisis where new clothing is either unavailable or outrageously expensive, having a supply of fabric, even torn or stained material, gives you options. It becomes raw material, and if someone in your household knows how to sew, its value multiplies. You can mend damaged clothes, create useful items from scratch, or even offer repair services in exchange for other essentials. Instead of throwing worn-out clothing in the trash, start cutting it into practical sections. Sort and store the pieces in clearly labeled bins so you know what you have. Fabric is a reusable, adaptable resource, and right now, most people are discarding it without realizing what they're giving up. Let's move on to item number 3, batteries, even the ones you think are completely dead. When a flashlight flickers out or the remote stops working, most people pop the batteries out and toss them straight into the trash. End of story. But here's the thing, not every dead battery is actually fully drained. A lot of batteries still carry a partial charge, even after they stop powering high-demand devices. And in a situation where replacements are hard to find or too expensive to justify, Even a weak battery can provide just enough power to keep something small running when you really need it. There's also a practical strategy known as battery rotation. The idea is simple. Use partially drained batteries in low-energy devices like wall clocks or TV remotes. Then reserve your brand new batteries for equipment that demands more power, like flashlights, emergency radios, or other critical tools. That way, you stretch your total supply much further. If you're a bit more technically inclined, there are even ways to extract leftover energy from disposable batteries by connecting them in series within certain rechargeable setups. It requires care and know-how, but the principle is that small amounts of remaining charge can still be put to use. Start separating your used batteries from your fresh ones. Test them occasionally with a battery tester to see what they still have left. You might be surprised by how many still hold usable power. And even if they're truly drained, consider holding on to them. Batteries contain metals and components that can sometimes be recycled or repurposed for DIY projects, if you understand how to handle them safely. During severe economic downturns like what happened in Venezuela, people reportedly scavenged batteries from broken electronics just to keep essential devices operating. That's not a position you want to find yourself in unexpectedly. Item number 4. Cardboard and packing materials. I'm talking about all of it. Amazon boxes, shipping cartons, bubble wrap, packing peanuts, foam inserts. Most people break them down the second a package is opened and send everything straight to recycling. It feels efficient, it feels responsible. But you might be discarding something surprisingly useful. Cardboard, for example, doesn't get nearly enough credit. It works as solid insulation, catches fire easily as tinder, and can be shaped into temporary shelters, windbreaks, or basic moisture barriers. If you flatten and layer it, cardboard even creates ground insulation when you're sleeping outdoors or in an unheated space. That added layer between you and the cold ground can make a noticeable difference. Bubble wrap and foam packing materials are just as practical. They can help insulate exposed pipes, cushion fragile belongings during a move, or even serve as makeshift window insulation to reduce heat loss in colder months. In a pinch, these materials become tools, not trash. During tough economic periods, people who need to relocate, store belongings, or protect valuables often can't justify spending money on brand new packing supplies. If you've kept a supply, you either save yourself that expense or have something valuable to trade. Instead of tossing everything out, flatten your cardboard boxes and store them somewhere dry to prevent damage. Keep bubble wrap, foam, and other packing materials organized in bins so they're easy to access. These materials cost you nothing to keep, yet they offer very real practical benefits. Right now, most households treat them like disposable clutter, when in reality, they're zero-cost resources with genuine survival value. Item number 5. Plastic containers and buckets. Think about how often you buy products like cooking oil, laundry detergent, bulk foods, or even paint. Once they're empty, you're left with sturdy plastic containers or buckets, and most people toss them without hesitation. That's a missed opportunity because those containers can be incredibly valuable in a crisis. Food-grade plastic buckets, especially the larger ones, are excellent for long-term storage. If they're sealed properly, you can store dry staples like rice, beans, flour, or sugar for years. That's not just convenient, that's serious food security. Even non-food-grade buckets have plenty of practical uses. They can hold tools, store water for washing, organize emergency supplies, or act as general-purpose storage for just about anything that needs protection from the elements. Don't overlook the smaller containers either. Yogurt tubs, takeout boxes, margarine containers. These are perfect for sorting small hardware, storing seeds, organizing medical items, or even carrying small amounts of water when needed. In an extended emergency, organization quickly becomes one of your biggest challenges. If you can't store and protect what you have, you risk losing it. And here's the reality. Once a crisis hits, buying brand new storage containers may be either impossible or outrageously expensive. Demand spikes fast when people realize they need to preserve what they've got. So start building your supply now. Wash everything thoroughly, let it dry completely, and stack or nest containers inside one another to save space. Focus especially on pieces with tight-fitting lids that seal well. Item number 6. Broken electronics and small appliances. When your toaster quits, your old laptop refuses to power on, or the coffee maker finally gives up, the usual reaction is simple: throw it out or drop it off at an e-waste facility. It feels like clutter once it stops working. But here's what most people don't realize. Even non-functioning electronics are packed with valuable components. Inside those devices are screws, wiring, circuit boards, small motors, magnets, batteries, plastic housings, and metal parts, all of which can be reused in one way or another. What looks like junk on the outside is often a collection of perfectly usable materials on the inside. If you look back at periods like the Great Depression or World War II, people didn't discard broken items so quickly. They dismantled them. They salvaged every usable part because buying new simply wasn't an option. Resources were limited, and creativity filled the gap. Now imagine a serious financial downturn where supply chains stall. Replacement parts won't show up at your doorstep in 2 days. If something essential breaks, like a radio, flashlight, or small appliance, you'll either have to repair it yourself or rely on someone local who can. And repairs require parts. Even if you don't currently know how to fix electronics, holding on to broken devices gives you raw materials to learn with, or to trade with someone who has the skills. A small motor or a set of intact wires could suddenly have real value. Before you toss out a broken device, consider opening it carefully and salvaging the useful components. Sort and store those pieces in clearly labeled containers so you can find them later. Over time, you'll build a basic inventory of spare parts. Item number 7. Physical instruction manuals. Whenever you purchase a new tool, appliance, or piece of equipment, it usually comes with a printed manual. Most people flip through it once, if that, then toss it in the trash or recycling. After all, why keep a booklet when you can just search YouTube or Google anytime you need help? But here's the real question. What happens if the internet isn't accessible? If the power grid is unstable, cloud services are down, or your devices can't connect? All that digital convenience disappears instantly. In that situation, a physical manual becomes incredibly valuable. Those booklets aren't just filler paper. They include troubleshooting steps, detailed parts diagrams, maintenance schedules, and repair instructions. They explain how to safely take something apart, clean it properly, and put it back together again. That kind of step-by-step guidance matters when something breaks and you don't have outside help. In a serious crisis, professional repair services may be too expensive or simply unavailable. Having printed instructions on hand could mean the difference between fixing a machine yourself and losing it completely. There's historical proof of this. During Cuba's economic crisis in the 1990s, people managed to keep cars from the 1950s running for decades. They didn't have access to online tutorials or search engines. What they had were physical repair guides and manuals, and that knowledge on paper kept essential equipment alive. Start saving every manual that comes with your purchases. Organize them in a binder or filing system, sorted by category: appliances, tools, vehicles, electronics. Keep them somewhere dry and easy to access. Item number 8. Seeds from the produce you already buy. Every time you slice into a tomato, scoop out a pepper, cut open a squash, or core an apple, you're handling seeds, and most of the time they go straight into the trash. But those small, overlooked pieces are potential food security sitting in your hands. Each seed carries the ability to grow into a plant that can produce dozens, sometimes even hundreds, of new seeds. That means you're not just saving one future plant, you're starting a renewable cycle of food production that can continue season after season. History gives us a clear example. When the Soviet Union collapsed, many families got through hard times by planting small home gardens using seeds they had saved. The people who had seeds could grow their own food. Those who didn't were forced to pay inflated prices or simply go without. Now, it's true that not every seed will sprout, and not all saved seeds will grow exactly like the original produce. But many absolutely will. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, peas, squash, and melons are all relatively simple crops to collect seeds from and regrow. The process isn't complicated. Rinse the seeds thoroughly, let them dry completely to prevent mold, and store them in paper envelopes. Keep those envelopes in a cool, dry place and clearly label each one with the plant type and the date you saved it. You're not trying to build a commercial seed vault. You're simply creating a backup food supply that costs you nothing to start. And in the middle of a serious disruption, that small habit could turn into one of the most valuable preparations you've made. Item number 9. Physical maps. When's the last time you actually unfolded a paper map? For most people, navigation means pulling out a phone, opening Google Maps, and letting GPS handle the rest. It's convenient, and we've grown completely dependent on it. But if that technology suddenly stops working, a lot of people wouldn't even know where they're standing. In a serious crisis, whether it's a power grid failure, downed cell towers, or compromised satellite systems, digital navigation can disappear instantly. No turn-by-turn directions, no rerouting around traffic, no quick search for the nearest gas station. Without signal or battery life, your smartphone becomes just another dead device in your pocket. That's where physical maps come back into play. Road atlases, regional maps, and topographic maps suddenly become essential tools. They don't need electricity, they don't rely on a network, they just work. We've seen this during natural disasters. After Hurricane Katrina, for example, people who had paper maps were able to navigate around flooded neighborhoods, blocked highways, and evacuation zones. Meanwhile, those relying entirely on their phones found themselves stuck once batteries drained and charging wasn't an option. And maps aren't only about getting from point A to point B. They reveal water sources, terrain elevation, geographic features, back roads, potential shelter locations, and resource points. In a true survival situation, that kind of information can be life-saving. Start building a small collection. Get detailed maps of your local area, your state, and neighboring regions. Pick up a road atlas. If you live in a rural or mountainous area, invest in topographic maps as well. Store copies in waterproof sleeves. Keep some at home and at least one set in your vehicle. When the signal drops and GPS goes silent, paper navigation becomes more than old-fashioned. It becomes a serious advantage. Item number 10. Newspapers and everyday paper products. Think about how much paper passes through your home. Newspapers, advertising mailers, old magazines, cardboard inserts from packaging. Most of it barely pauses before heading straight into the recycling bin. It feels like clutter. But in a resource-strained situation, paper stops being disposable and starts being useful. Paper has a surprising number of practical applications. It works exceptionally well as fire-starting material. When crumpled and packed into gaps, it can serve as makeshift insulation inside walls, boots, or jackets. Shredded paper can be used as mulch in a garden, and many types can be composted to enrich soil over time. Newspaper in particular is incredibly versatile. It can wrap fragile items for storage, line shelves or drawers, absorb moisture, or even help clean glass and windows without leaving streaks. These are simple uses, but in a crisis, simple solutions matter. When supplies become limited and store shelves aren't reliably stocked, everyday materials regain their value. Saving paper isn't about hoarding junk. It's about recognizing a free, multi-purpose resource that's already passing through your hands. Keep it organized and store it flat in a dry space to prevent damage. You don't need stacks reaching the ceiling, but maintaining a consistent supply means you won't be scrambling for kindling, insulation, or garden material when you suddenly need it. Item number 11. Prescription bottles and other medicine containers. Whenever you finish a prescription, the empty bottle usually goes straight into the trash. It seems like it served its purpose. But those little containers are actually tough, compact, and designed to be moisture-resistant, with secure, child-proof caps that seal tightly. That makes them ideal for storing small but important items. You can use them to hold seeds, matches, fire-starting materials, basic first aid supplies, buttons, screws, fishing hooks, anything tiny that needs to stay dry and easy to find. In an emergency, keeping small gear protected and organized isn't just convenient, it's critical. When you're dealing with limited resources, losing a few essential pieces because they weren't stored properly can mean the difference between repairing something and being stuck without it. Before storing them, peel off or scratch off the prescription labels to protect your privacy. Wash the containers thoroughly and let them dry completely. Then keep them empty and ready until you need them. They barely take up any room, but when the moment comes that you need a small waterproof container, you'll be glad you didn't throw them away. Item number 12. Candle stubs and leftover wax. When a candle burns down to that last inch or two, most people toss it out without thinking twice. It feels finished. But that remaining wax still has plenty of life left in it. Those small remnants can be melted down and poured into a new container with a fresh wick, giving you an entirely new candle. You can even blend different colors or scents together if you want. What looks like scraps can easily become something functional again. Wax also works great in fire-starting kits. Adding melted wax to cotton or other tinder materials makes them burn longer and more reliably, especially useful for camping or emergency situations. Beyond lighting and fire starting, wax has practical maintenance uses too. You can rub it along sticky zippers to help them glide smoothly. It can be applied to canvas or leather for light waterproofing. You can use it to help seal jars or even to lubricate drawers and windows that tend to stick. If electricity becomes unreliable or too expensive, candles shift from decorative items to essential light sources. And if you know how to remake them from leftover wax, you're no longer fully dependent on buying new ones. Start keeping every candle stub instead of discarding it. Toss them into a container and wait until you've collected enough to melt down and repurpose. With a little effort, you can make sure none of that usable material goes to waste. Item number 13. Aluminum foil and aluminum containers. After a single use, most people wad up aluminum foil and toss it straight into the trash. It feels disposable. But if the foil isn't badly torn or covered in heavy food residue, it can actually be reused several times. Just rinse it gently, smooth it back out, fold it neatly, and store it for later. You can reuse foil to cover leftovers, wrap food, line baking surfaces, or even create a quick makeshift cooking tray. It's more durable than people give it credit for. And beyond basic kitchen reuse, aluminum has real survival value. Foil can be shaped into small bowls or cups if you need an improvised container. It can be positioned behind a fire to reflect heat toward a shelter or sitting area, helping conserve warmth. In an emergency, a shiny sheet of foil can even act as a signaling device to catch sunlight and attract attention. Aluminum cans deserve the same level of respect. With simple tools, they can be cut and reshaped into small cooking pots, scoops, improvised tools, or compact camp stoves. In some developing countries facing economic hardship, entire small-scale businesses have formed around collecting and repurposing aluminum materials. Instead of automatically discarding foil after one use, or throwing cans away without thinking, pause and consider their flexibility. Aluminum is lightweight, strong, corrosion-resistant, and incredibly adaptable. What seems like everyday waste can quickly become a practical, multi-use resource when replacements aren't easy to come by. Item number 14. Rubber bands, twist ties, and other small fasteners. Almost everything you buy comes attached to some kind of securing piece. There are rubber bands wrapped around produce, twist ties sealing bread bags, and zip ties holding electronics packaging together. Most of the time, those little pieces go straight into the trash without a second thought. But those small fasteners are surprisingly versatile. Rubber bands can reseal opened bags, bundle loose items together, act as temporary grips, or even serve as components in simple survival traps. They stretch, they hold tension, and they're reusable. Twist ties and similar fasteners are just as practical. They can patch sections of fencing, secure a tarp in windy conditions, organize tangled cords, or provide a quick temporary fix for something that's come loose. They're not permanent solutions, but in an emergency, temporary fixes can be exactly what you need. During a crisis, it's often the small, simple tools that make the biggest difference. The ability to fasten, bundle, or stabilize something without running to a store for specialty hardware gives you flexibility and speed. Start keeping a dedicated container for these items. Drop every rubber band, twist tie, zip tie, and miscellaneous fastener into it. It won't take long before you've built a sizable collection, without spending a dime. And when something suddenly needs securing and you don't have the perfect tool on hand, you'll be glad you kept a stash of adaptable, ready-to-use options. Item number 15. Worn-out shoes and boots. When a pair of shoes starts falling apart, most people toss them without hesitation. They assume they've reached the end of their usefulness. But even heavily worn footwear still contains materials you can salvage and reuse. The rubber soles, for instance, can be cut into non-slip pads, makeshift gaskets, or patch material for other gear. Leather from old boots can be trimmed and repurposed for repairs, reinforcement patches, grips, or small DIY projects. Even the laces have value. They can serve as replacement ties or lightweight cordage in a pinch. In a long-term crisis, reliable footwear becomes more important than ever. If you're walking more and driving less, your shoes will wear down faster. And if supply chains are strained, replacing them could be difficult or expensive. Having spare materials on hand to patch and reinforce your current pair could stretch their lifespan by months or even years. There's another layer to this as well. Shoe repair itself becomes a valuable skill. If you know how to fix footwear using salvaged materials, that's a service you can offer in exchange for other necessities. Practical skills often carry more weight than cash during economic instability. Instead of throwing worn-out shoes away, take them apart. Separate the usable components and store them in an organized way. Spend time learning basic shoe repair techniques. In a crisis, your feet are your primary mode of transportation. Protecting them isn't optional, it's essential. When economies falter, the families who make it through aren't always the ones with the largest bank accounts. They're the ones who know how to adapt. Resourcefulness begins with recognizing value where other people see garbage. This isn't about hoarding, it's about adjusting your mindset. Choose one category from this list, the one that fits your situation best, and begin there. Save it. Organize it. Gradually build your reserve while these materials are still easy to find and cost you nothing. Because once a crisis is underway, you won't get the chance to recover the things you've already discarded. If this message changed the way you look at everyday items, consider supporting the channel. Leave a comment and share which of these 15 categories you're planning to start with.